So you're looking. So we do have some people showing up. Great, great.
Nice.
Welcome, welcome. So you're looking very like I'm trying to figure out this room. It looks Mexican to me.
It's definitely in Mexico.
Definitely in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is your old stomping ground. This is San Miguel, Allende.
Yeah, yeah. San Miguel's great. It's really,
Yeah.
really great. I mean, it's beautiful and historic and very artsy. We liked the cafes. It had good food. It was good, to be there with a youngin.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a I think a Waldorf school at the time, and is that still there?
They've got three now.
Three, my goodness gracious.
It's amazing.
That's impressive. So you've kind of set up shop there at least for now.
Yeah, at least for now. We'll be here for a little while, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. Lee and I have gone through reminiscing over over San Miguel, as we get little snippets of your life, and you published something on your Facebook page, and with your kid, and there was like a flower for the face, and like that was pretty cool, but it just totally took us back. We're like, yeah, we remember that. I know our son had his first and third birthdays in Mexico.
Wow, cool, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's a great place for kids. If you've got kids, you can, yeah, do all sorts of stuff with them.
I'm glad you're finding it that way. And how is your better half?
She's good, man. She's good. She's working. She's loving life. We've both found SMA to be really good, like a big upgrade from where we were living before. Just in a lot of ways. Not to mention the food, which you did mention, which I'm very much enjoying.
That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, probably some of the stuff that was there isn't even there anymore. There was like Hecho in Mexico. Is that still there? A little restaurant down Hecho in Mexico was this great little just all-purpose kind of foodie place at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's still there. I just don't think we've actually used it a whole lot.
Yeah, because you could get, a lot of it was just good. It wasn't like great, but it was just good at the time. Yeah, I would try that. I don't know. We also went to a place called was it the Neptune or Poseidon? It was a Greek name. It was this really, really good high-end foodie restaurant where you could get like deer, like venison and all these other things. It was very, very tasty.
Nice. That sounds good. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, who knows if anything is still there
Yeah.
in so long. So people are kind of filing in. Welcome, April. I see Sabina and April and Phil. Welcome. Thanks for showing up, folks.
Dan.
That's great. I like that we can see people. Um, let's see. It's about 3 after. We're going to give it a couple more minutes just to let people get in the door. Maybe if you're listening to this and we sound okay, let's do a little sound check. So if you can hear Saul, that's me, okay, then please let me know. Mic check, mic check.
I don't know about other people, but I mean, for me on my end, you're sometimes a little bit quiet.
Really? Let me make sure I've got my volume up. Yeah. Sound is great. Okay. I can I can verify one more thing very quickly. Hold on.
Loud and clear for Steve. Sounds great, April. Sounds great, Trey. Hey, Trey. It's good to recognize some of the names.
All right. So is Brendan loud and clear also for people? the other question is his image had frozen up a little bit earlier, so wanted to make sure that he's no longer static. Bueller, Bueller.
I've got it on. I've got the feed on my my computer here, and it's not frozen.
Okay, good, good. Hey, that's actually a really good idea. I could do the same thing, couldn't I? Um, how brilliant. Yes. That's just absolutely brilliant. Very, very, very nice. Okay, well, I'm going to get us going here. It's 5 after, and I will share a little intro here. This is Saul Luckman, and welcome to Conversations on Saul Luckman Uncensored in its new home at saulluckman.substack.com. Please take off your sandals and enjoy this candid conversation between conscious creators about creativity, culture, and the cosmos. If you have questions for today's speakers, please put them in all caps in the chat. Otherwise, be sure to write in mostly lowercase so I can tell the difference and ignore you. Just kidding. Today, it's my pleasure and honor to converse with my longtime friend and colleague, Brendan D. Murphy of truthiverse.com and officialbrendanmurphy.substack.com. Brendan's amazing first book, The Grand Illusion, was really extraordinary. I described it as a paradigm destroying book for rearguard scientific funda materialists. It truly is. So yes, this chat, which I hope will include a preview of Brendan's follow-up book, which is in the works, I hear, will most likely put consciousness in its rightful place as the generator of quote unquote reality, and thus maybe even trigger some people. So be it. To avoid criticism, observed Aristotle, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. I'd simply add that in the saying, doing, and being, I've realized that, in the words of Umberto Eco, to survive, you must tell stories. And for Substack channels to survive, they need subscribers and restacks. Just saying. All right. So thanks for joining me, Brendan. It's been like well, at least 2 years. I was going to say forever, but it's also passed very quickly in some ways.
Wow, that's insane to me that it's been 2 years. Wow.
It's bizarre, right? It's really amazing. Like I know we've both been doing a lot of stuff professionally and personally, and but 2 years, goodness.
Goodness gracious. Yes. Well, I mean, you've been busy. You've published more books this year than I have my whole life, I think.
Yeah, well, I bet you they're not as well documented. You
Mine's
definitely have
different.
more of a
Different.
scholarly edge. I did that in graduate school, and when I got out of graduate school and started publishing books, I'm like, screw that. I am not doing standard citation. I hate the minutia of that. But you're excellent at it.
I don't love it either, but I seem to love the self punishment.
That's right. That's right. You masochist. That's right. Well, that's cool. Did you I know that I gave you a read. I thought your book was very well edited when I reread it after it came out. The Grand Illusion. Did you have another editor looking at your work, or were you self editing?
I mean, for this one, I've had it kind of peer reviewed by a colleague in the UK. We'll get it professionally edited when we put it through the whole, publication process. But I think actually there's very little editing to do, to be honest.
That's awesome. So, what is the actual full title of this new book? This is the sequel to The Grand Illusion: A Synthesis of Science and Spirituality. Correct?
That's correct. I mean, they're technically the same book, just split in two. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah, I really haven't finalized it. I was thinking something along the lines of, you know, secrets of death and immortality.
Yeah. Yeah. Right up my alley.
Yeah, I thought it might be. Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what we come up with in the end.
What is your ETA on getting that out there?
Well, I mean, I've been intending on, sort of like maybe the last quarter of this year, ideally. But I'm not that attached to it. Like if it's early next year, then so be it.
Now I know the first volume, if you want to look at it that way, was biblical in size, to say nothing of scope, of course. But how big is the second one in terms of page length?
It's at this moment, I'm yet to do one more cull. I'm gonna go through it again, but it's a little longer actually.
That really makes it expensive to publish as a paperback, doesn't it, these days?
Yeah, it kind of does actually. Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. You gotta suck it up. I was never ever gonna write a short, like 200-page kind of book. It was just never gonna happen. Maybe next time.
Yeah, yeah. That's what's happened to me. Is my books are getting shorter. Maybe as I'm getting older, the books are getting shorter. Losing my attention span or redirecting it, something like that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so you have
You
this.
don't have to.
So you have kind of a working title concept around death or dying, afterlife, immortality, that kind of thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, pretty much it. It. I mean, it kicks off the launching point of it is the where book one actually finished. So it's a logical kind of progression from there. But obviously in since 2012, I've had that 13-year interval to continue digging into certain things. So yeah, it's gonna be, I think, pretty eye opening for a lot of people.
You know, the first book was such a deconstruction of so many notions about the nature of science, reality, consciousness. What stands out for you looking back on that, through the from the perspective of, a decade later, or longer, I guess. I know that when I look back on Conscious Healing or Potentiate Your DNA, which I wrote quite some time ago, there's some cringe sometimes about some of the things that I said, or the way I said it, or maybe even my thinking process. And then there are some like nice aha moments that, I reread it, or someone presents me with a passage, or, a screenshot, or who knows what. And I'm like, who wrote that? That's pretty cool. So what stands out for you, good and bad, I suppose, in the first
Yeah,
book?
yeah. I kind of I think the languaging of it would is different. For whatever reason, I think the languaging of book one was a little more, slightly more towards the academic side of the spectrum. Um, and not that it was, like hyper, but it was, yeah, some people found it that way, I know. And I think this next volume is a little more readable. So yeah, I think maybe that was partly because at the time when I was writing that, I think I was reading a lot of stuff that had been written kind of like 1800s, early 1900s, and it sort of it seeps in, and it influences the way that you form sentences. Um, so yeah, I definitely noticed that. I wouldn't write it exactly the same way again, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't, I see bits and pieces of it here and there. Occasionally, I'll like grab a little snippet and recycle it, kind of thing. But I haven't really kind of read it properly for a while. I think definitely I would see parts of it for as being a little, maybe not as expressed quite, like you said, you maybe would have said something slightly differently. Now you would put it in maybe a more sophisticated or nuanced kind of a way. But I haven't found too much that I would, be like, oh my God, why is that in there? That's not right. That's like the message is the same, hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's really, really good. I know that, I went through a period of time several years ago, and I actually kind of brought this up in my little book, um, Musings, which is my art book, and I was quoting or referencing William Faulkner, who in his 70s, I think he was the writer in residence at the University of Virginia, and he was asked by some student about, maybe As I Lay Dying, or one of his very early books, The Sound and the Fury. I don't recall which book. And he basically said that he didn't remember that and it wasn't really a dementia thing. It was more like he was someone so different that he no longer understood his own early fiction. It was
Yeah.
so removed from him. It was really, really intense. And sometimes I feel that way about my early work. It's like, that's really interesting. Who wrote that? That's very curious. Who is that alien creature writing those words? And now I'm off. Probably people think I'm even more alien these days than I was when I released those books. It's very, very, very strange. But to me, that's become those things have become normal that I wrote about, like DNA and DNA activation, wave genetics, all of these types of things. That's just how that's how this construct functions. It's like that's easy. That's sort of like kindergarten stuff. And now I'm off into other territory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like the creative output in that book was what pales in comparison to the creative output in the next installation. And then when I've got this one out of the way, I'll have a little, not a blank slate, but a little bit more creative freedom because I won't be working from a huge, already mostly written manuscript. So get a little bit more of the right brain, creativity going in there, and unleash a little bit more. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to for future writing.
Oh, that's great. So do you think you will move into are you sticking with the nonfiction and when you go down that path in your mind?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I can see. I'm not a fiction guy. I haven't figured out a story. A fictional. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. I'm, I live solely in the nonfiction section of the library. I don't know. That's all. That's just the way it is. But maybe one day down the track, I'll have a lightning bolt and figure out a way to write TGI book one for 6-year-olds or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's very, very cool. I was on a bike ride today, speaking of the lightning bolt, and I just had a complete idea for a novel pop into my head, and I kind of processed it over the course of an hour-long bike ride. And it's the way this is the way stuff happens with me. I go for long stretches, and I'm absolutely empty, creatively strung out. I'm just not there. I don't have an idea worth writing about. And so I don't write. I know there are writers who sit down and write no matter what. And I'm like, I'm just not like that. I don't do that. I don't write when I don't have anything to write. But when the idea hits me, then, you know, I know I should be writing it. So I got really a real big download today, which is really a recipe for a lot of self guilt because I don't plan on writing this book anytime soon. I have other projects at the moment, so it's going to hang out in the room with me like this elephant watching me out of the corner of its eye for
Yeah,
however
yeah.
long. At this point,
Work on me, soul. Write me, soul. Write me.
that's right. It's really, really intense. So, have you had any sense of Well, the question I'm trying to formulate is there's a lot of weird energy that's been going on in this particular Mercury retrograde. Have you picked up on any of that? I've had such weird encounters with rude people online mostly. Have you felt like a lot of tension in the air?
Um, well, I have to ask you, man. I'm never on the ball with this. When did it start? The retrograde.
When did it start? Was it about a week and a half ago, something like that?
Oh, okay. I honestly, I mean, my whole year's been such a roller coaster ride. It just, I, I'm not noticing anything
I
different at this
think they
point.
call that fatherhood.
Father, exactly, exactly. You 1 minute you're heap on the floor, the next minute you're riding high. It's retrograde or not. I'm just doing my thing in my little bubble here. But yeah, I do go through phases of that. Like it's like when it rains, it pours, right? You have one bizarre exchange with somebody, and then you have another one, and then another one, and you're like, what is going on here? This is bizarre, and then it just stops. But right now, yeah, I'm not really having any like obvious kind of retrograde stuff going on, other than maybe I don't know, maybe like emotional collective stuff. Who knows? But I need to do a better job of tracking those things. I'm just not onto it.
Well, sometimes I wish I weren't aware of it and I could just ignore it and, what happens, happens. Other things that we become acutely aware of over the years include, for example, uh, solar flares or geomagnetic storms. These always fritz electronics, and they also fritz human behavior. You get in
Mm,
it's weird traffic situations. I go out and ride my bike, and I'm nearly run over 4 or 5 times. When that kind of stuff is going on. There's a lot of me that just I wish I weren't aware of it, but I can also feel when those things happen in my body, which is very, very odd. I am
mm,
so energy sensitive in a way. I mean, I'm not weak or fragile or anything like that, but I can just feel energy so uh, cleanly that when there is an electromagnetic pulse, I usually feel it before it happens.
mhm,
And then,
right.
and it's just really, really something to experience. And a lot of people in my little inner circle, people who I spend time with in my private life, have become aware that I can do that, and it always freaks them out a little bit.
Yeah, man, that's a good skill to have. Oh, yeah. I mean, right now I'm saying this as there's a really hectic wind that's just kicked off here. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm feeling maybe some of the frazzle I've been having lately is to do with what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's been some of that going on. We've really been in a solar maximum for a while, so we've been getting bombarded with a lot of energy. And what I think that does is the way it works. You have like the electric universe theory and all of that for as something that I'm aware of, and the how you might have a kind of like sort of a plasma type of thrust out from the sun. But then what I think that actually does is it has a non-local torsion component that it pushes out. So that's the first thing we get, and we get it instantaneously. We don't have to wait for anything. And that's what I feel. I feel that torsion wave before it ever gets to us. And then the other one hits and I can feel that, but it's a little bit different. So it's like I'm actually distinguishing in some ways between hyperdimensional and dimensional energies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's almost like you get the time reversed kind of torsion thing, and then the normal EM spectrum kind of follows after that.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And it's very much in keeping with the model, but I wasn't thinking about the model when I was experiencing these things. It was just like, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's weird. You could just, your moods might get altered, or you might have more energy, or you might detox a little bit just randomly. Like, what the heck is going on with that? And then you read about this solar flare that just happened like a day later or something like that, and it's just very, very strange. And Lee can do that also, and we've compared notes on this, and very often we're both exactly on the same page, even if we're not reading the news or looking at any solar weather websites or anything like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I'm more of a bubble in my own little Brindy bubble most of the time.
Randy
Like
bubble, I like that.
it's a yeah. I think I have like a more of a filtered, selective sensitivity rather than being like open, just like open slather, constantly picking stuff up. I'm more like it only registers what it wants to register.
Well, that's actually a gift. That is definitely a gift. I know we are different energy families, like electromagnetic groups. So that
Yeah,
I don't know if that has anything to do with anything.
yeah. I mean, also I was going to ask you, because what were you? Were you one or two? I forget.
One.
One. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was three. Um,
Yes.
which you know more about that side of it than I do. I sort of haven't focused on it a lot.
Right. It's just one little piece of the work. For those of you out there who don't know what the world we're talking about, we're talking about an aspect of Regenetics method. Brendan is a facilitator of this work that Lee and I developed. It's a form of sound healing that is designed to use a kind of wave genetics approach to activating your genetic potential for self healing, and it kind of resets your energy structure and does some very interesting things in terms of kundalini energy, consciousness, empowerment. All kinds of good things can come from regenetics. I've written a couple books about it. Conscious healing is one. Potentiate your DNA is another. And what we're talking about specifically with energy families is something that Lee and I got into many years ago, where we discovered that there are 12 different groups of humans on the planet who have what, I use that word in quotes because who knows, um, that uh, that actually have different energy structures. We've been taught that everyone has these chakras and they're aligned, and the throat chakra means this, and the heart chakra means that. And basically, we threw all of that out the window with our kinesiological testing, and came to the conclusion that these different families, their chakras have different purposes and energies that they um, that they emit and receive. So long story short, so Brendan is one family, I'm a different family, and it makes for slight and sometimes not so slight differences in psychology, outlook, personality. It's very fascinating. I can meet somebody now, having done this work for so long, who's, let's say, an energy family one, and I just know immediately that they're energy family one. You can just feel it. They tend to be very, very charismatic, very gifted in the leadership uh, category when they're in alignment. Otherwise, they can be kind of prima donnas and spoiled brats, and that certainly all of that applies to me over the course of my life at one time or another. Group threes, which is what Brendan is, tend to be a little quieter, a little softer around the edges, and they also tend to be, which can change as they step into their power, meaning they can then set their boundaries and do all of those things that need to be done. But in the beginning, for some threes, they can really be like a fish out of water, and they're also like nature people. Like if I were to characterize threes in terms of Tolkien's races in Middle Earth, threes are elves, twos are dwarves, and ones are humans.
Yeah.
And hobbits, wouldn't be and necessarily in this equation, but we could talk theoretically about that.
I thought you were going to say three is hobbits, and I was like, ah.
Uh, no. So, and actually, when I say one, two, and three, that actually accounts for six of the 12 groups, because there are just very slight differences between sort of like one A and a one B, a two A and a two B, a three A and a three B. So, anyway, it is kind of interesting if you're into this kind of thing and wanting to add some perspective to things like human design and astrology, and even Chinese medicine and its understanding of the different facial structures and that kind of thing, then this would be a nice feather in your cap. So check out Regenetics. You can go to
Yeah.
phoenixregenetics.org to learn more.
And it was interesting because I remember, I think it might be conscious healing. Didn't you say that there were, initially, so there was the three groups, only the three groups were attracted, like the one, two, and three were they were the only ones who were attracted or drawn to that type of work, the Regenetics type stuff. And then did you figure out like the one A, B, and, C kind of later on?
No, we had all of that in the beginning. We had done a ton of kinesiological work when we were doing allergy elimination techniques. So we were seeing a bunch of different people. So we actually saw people who were 4A and B, 5A and B, 6A and B, because it wasn't Regenetics. It wasn't set up like that. What happened when Regenetics came through, starting with potentiation, was that somehow it repelled people who were in groups 4, 5, and 6. They wouldn't do it. Even if we met people who were in those groups that we could identify, they didn't want to have anything to do with this work. And so it was really all about groups 1, 2, and 3 wanting to do the work. And as I learned more about certain subjects having to do with soul groups and families and that kind of thing, what I basically figured out, and Lee helped me with this, was that you have people who are evolving in two different ways. And so you have a kind of left hand path and a right hand path. I hate those terms, but for lack of a better way of expressing it, you essentially have a service to self
So,
group, and you
yeah.
have a service to others group, and it has to do with this thing called the fragmentary body. Hi, Alec. Good to see you.
G'day, brother.
Um, it has to do with the fragmentary body, and would you? I would continue this conversation, but I don't want to monologue, Brendan. What is your understanding of the fragmentary body? And I can get back to the service to self and service to others maybe after we've let people in on what do we mean by the fragmentary body?
Yeah, because I want to hear that as it played out to the people who didn't want anything to do with the work. But yeah, so the fragmentary body was, funnily enough, not coincidentally, a concept that I found through Soul's work. And so this was a distortion, an energy distortion, down in the region of the sacral chakra area, um, which was basically interfering with the correct or optimal flow of bioenergy through the biofield, right? And stop me if I'm off base with any of this. Um, so what was interesting to me was, I got your you found that through your all the muscle testing and stuff that you guys were doing, you and Lee, and then as I started working with the modality and talking about it, I started to encounter people, including Eileen, our mutual friend of Alex as well, Eileen McCusick, who was talking about this. She called it something like a disc that was in that region, um, approximately in that region, that was blocking the flow of energy through the rest of the system. So what you guys both mutually described was, you were basically talking about the same thing. And then I had other people talk about it, like Reiki masters who were like, every single person I get on this massage table has this problem in the area that you're talking about. But they'd never heard it, reframed like that or explained in that quite that way. So yeah, what would you add to that, aside from being a consciousness drain and a vitality drain, as correlated with that other vortex up above the head that's not supposed to be there?
Yeah, right. So the idea is that you did a great job. I mean, let's see, what would I add to that? Well, the idea is that it's a kind of implant. Like we are designed to have a different structure, but we have a kind of implanted energy area, which is actually a kind of vulnerability or a hole in our energetic anatomy that allows for energy to be taken from us. And this is kind of where most loosh would come from, the idea of kind of harvestable human energy that's created through trauma and that sort of thing, that, on the world stage or in our personal lives. This was designed to allow for that harvest to occur. And then that, in my writing in The World Cult and You, and in Get Out of Here Alive, and in my new ebook, Out Through the Indoor, I talk about the structure of the world as being kind of a pyramid with a archontic being, an inorganic being, a creature, an apex predator from the dream world, sitting on top of the apex of the pyramid, siphoning off the energy of the world. And it uses our attention on negative and traumatic events to seesaw our emotions and to let that loosh out of our fragmentary bodies, and then it basically is passed up the food chain all the way to that apex predator. So in the model that I sketch out more and more over the course of these books that I just enumerated, the the uh, the dragon, which is what I call this being in Get Out of Here Alive, the dragon actually, in essence, uh, was part of the creation of this fragmentary body, if you will, the distortion of our initial blueprint, because it gave us its mind as an operating system, and when it did that, it pushed down our unconscious mind, the vast reservoir of our unconsciousness that we experienced in the dream time. This is recorded in the story of the Garden of Eden, where the serpent appears, and in exchange for the apple from the tree of knowledge, it basically gives us its mind. That is the trade off, where we open our eyes finally, and we achieve individual consciousness outside of the group unconscious mind. And I don't use unconscious in a pejorative way. I mean, it's a super powerful reservoir of being and gnosis that we were separated from. And so all of that was kind of pushed down into, anatomically, I think of it as actually being pushed down below the second chakra, where the fragmentary body. It's like our subconscious is literally sitting down around the anus.
So,
Right, and we don't have access to it with our what we think of as our conscious minds, right? So to bridge the mind with the reservoir of the unconscious, we actually have to reconfigure ourselves energetically. And this is what Kundalini yoga and other things are all really attempting to do, is to create an energy conduit so that the energy of the unconscious, that is the power that creates realities, can flow up through our higher energy centers into our thinking apparatus, which is the brain, or at least the processor for being able to do what we call think. So the what we discovered with regenetics was that you can reconfigure that with a form of sound healing, so that the entire energy blueprint just resets. And then suddenly you don't have that fragmentary body, and the energy of the unconscious can flow up through your energy structure much more effortlessly and without harming you.
good explanation. Mate, I might have to run downstairs where it's a little bit quieter. Are you able to just hang tight for a second?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, it's just started hailing and raining, and I can barely hear you.
Okay, yeah, yeah, good.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries. So I wanted to, hey, Jacqueline. We've got some wonderful people in the chat. I'm really thankful to have everybody here. The Let's see, Brendan was really generous in writing a review of my latest book, Get Out of Here Alive. That's on the front page of my Substack right now, saulluckman.substack.com. So do give that a read. That was published in the current issue of New Dawn, which is a wonderful magazine out of Australia. So do check that out. I titled it from his quote, "A rollicking ride through history, biography, shamanic insight, self-empowerment, spiritual sovereignty, and more." So I love the subtitle, which is "How to Become Eminently Unfuckwithable." New word, neologism. All right, so Brendan is working on getting this set up again. If you have questions that you would like us to get to at the, I guess, the bottom of the hour, top of the hour, I always confuse those, then please write them in all caps. And I want to remind everybody that Brendan is reachable through a couple of different websites. Please check him out at truthiverse.com. And then his Substack is officialbrendanmurphy.substack.com. And I want to encourage everybody to read his book, The Grand Illusion, which is really a masterpiece of consciousness research. It's really fascinating and compelling. And he's coming out with the second volume of that in the next few months, and it will be basically The Grand Illusion Volume 2, with a subtitle that he said would have something to do with death and immortality, which is kind of my wavelength. My new book, Get Out of Here Alive, that he reviewed, is subtitled Inner Alchemy and Immortality. So we're both really on a very similar wavelength. And actually, it's funny because Brendan and I have always been on a similar wavelength. We've always been writing different parts of what feels like the same really big book. So that's kind of interesting. And we're
I'd
getting
agree with
some,
that. I would agree with
yeah,
that. Bear with me. No, I'm nearly back.
yeah. We're getting a little tour. I like this tour of a San Miguel pad.
There you go. Wasn't my plan, but there it is.
So is that better in terms of the volume?
It's a little less hectic with the rain and the hail in the background. We'll see how we go.
You got some weather.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened when Lee and I went to Brazil years and years ago, as we were developing Regenetics, we left in the middle of our winter, and I didn't know if I was going to be coming back. I was so sick at the time, and I was going on this kind of shamanic wanderjar with that Lee had just signed up for courageously, to to join me in a place she had no knowledge of, and she didn't really speak the language. And we went down to Brazil, and we had so many adventures, and we had the very strong perception as we were being led to the place where we were to receive these codes to do these activations, we were being chased by weather spirits. And now, literally, we got in crazy floods. We were in a place called Ideos, and we went into a steakhouse, and then, an hour later came out, and we walked through 4 feet of water back home. It was just coming down the street, and so many absolutely crazy weather things happened. And we really felt like we were being kind of chased and steered. At the time, it freaked us out. In retrospect, we wondered if we were actually being guided in some strange way. But it's interesting, very often when I'm having a meaningful or important conversation with someone, crazy weather will just erupt. So what happened with you just now was completely par for the course.
Yeah, that happens to me too, actually, and particularly with the topic that you had just broached when the weather went bad. This happens to me quite a bit as well, where it's like, oh, I'm always going to have a chance to talk about this. Oh, no, something's happened to scupper that and snuff it out, like it doesn't want to be discussed.
So did my explanation of the unconscious, in relation to the fragmentary body and the conscious mind, did that make sense? I know that's a huge topic, so I was giving the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, I mean, it's super relevant to what I'm doing as well. The whole sort of, I was a bit distracted by the weather as I was trying to listen to you, but what you're talking about is the sort of what I would frame as the collective consciousness, operating system, being this thing that some people call, the demiurge, or the dragon, as you refer to it as well. And talking about that in a way that's more meta and kind of rational, without being distracted or hypnotized or beguiled by the sort of the surface level appearances of its various manifestations. That's very close to home to me. That actually comes up in the very last chapter, towards the end of the last chapter of this second book, where I'm like, let's just kind of unveil that, because it needs to be done, even though it's not absolutely 1,000% central to the investigation into the afterlife. It is at the same time as well, but I just kind of skirt around it a little bit. I deal with it just very succinctly, and then kind of set the stage to really pull back the hood in subsequent writings. So yeah, anytime that subject comes up, I'm like, I'm ready to go, but something else has other ideas sometimes.
So say a little bit more about that. If you can do it without a spoiler, in terms of this new book. I'm curious exactly how you were approaching that, this subject matter. You were talking about the unconscious in some way in relation to the conscious mind.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of following from what you were saying, where you're talking about, I remember you were talking about the fragmentary body being this kind of like implant or installation, and then, you've mentioned Castaneda's work, and a whole bunch of other things in your writing. Um, Castaneda talks about the predator that sort of came from the depths, and gave us its mind, and this has become part of the kind of like popular, like almost new age kind of mythology or folklore. Um, and it's taken on all sorts of different kind of spins, and been worked into other people's belief systems and dogmas and things like that. But to me, the the seemingly foreign entity, or the predator entity, is really actually the collective human imaginal operating system. Like us collectively in the imaginal realm is this field based entity that we give all these different names to. And you actually wrote a list of like probably a couple of dozen or more names in Get Out of Here Alive, I remember. And I was like, yeah, he's talking about what I've just kind of outlined there.
Yeah, right. So you had written this. great article that I cite in this book, and it was the title was Archons on Netflix, and it was about Stranger Things, and it was looking at the Mind Flayer, and I was saying how the this dragon, this demiurge, this Lord Archon operates kind of like that. It basically takes over your mental processes, and you're not even aware that you're not thinking with your mind. And then you could say then that it lives through the people that it has possessed in a way, and that is its true existence, or at least our way of interfacing with its existence.
Yeah,
And it's very curious because it makes us really responsible for dreaming a certain kind of world, imagining a certain kind of world into existence using its prompts. And I go into how it uses mimetic desire and mimesis to steer the human herd in certain directions.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, took me a while to kind of realize like this dynamic is probably kind of a function or a result of the collective human like biological evolution, and as we have changed through the ages, that entity, that collective side of us, has also changed, but also it also hasn't changed that much in a lot of ways. Like it still retains its basic kind of like survival imperatives, like stick with the herd, don't get kicked out of the group. This collectivist kind of imperative that makes people act like sheep or zombies, um, even when there's overwhelming evidence that that's a bad idea.
Right, right,
And so it is living through us. Like we are, it's the kind of like in a sense the software installed into our minds, and then it lives through us as the human devices playing out the scripting, the programming, and then unless we kind of become a little more reflective and self-aware, we remain oblivious to the fact that we're being driven by something else, this collective entity.
yeah. I'm really, really glad you're going into that material in this book. I think you'll do a great job. I'm very eager to read this now, and it's important to have other voices talking about this material, because without this knowledge that we're sharing right now, I don't think it's possible for humanity to create a better world. I think we will always be on the hamster wheel of the dragon's own mimetic creation that we're responsible for.
Yeah.
Without figuring out that we can go in and actually reprogram our energy, we can take our power back, we can stop being loosed, we can build power in a certain way. I talk about creating your own internal philosopher's stone, and we can remove the tentacles as of the mind flayer, in essence, that have come up through our fragmentary body into the very seat of our power and are looshing us like a parasite, like a mental parasite. I mean, if you think about John Lamb Lash's work on the archons, how they are described as mental parasites. You have the notion of Wetiko, same thing, a mind virus that somehow, and although virus is a kind of funny way of describing it after the last few years and the things that we've learned, but in any case, as an analogy, it works. Some kind of thing feeding on us inside of ourselves, and people don't realize that if those conditions persist, your actions will be hijacked and will be put to negative uses and uses that you did not intend. So until you can take your power back and shut down your vulnerability to being loosed and controlled, it doesn't matter what you do in the world. It won't have a lasting effect to change it for you or anyone else. And having said that, and I'll get off my soapbox in 1 second, you might only be able to change your own world by doing this. I'm not saying, you're going to change the collective dream by taking back your power, but you will certainly change your own experience of the world by doing so. And if enough people were to come together and do this and then align their mimetic patterns, they could change the world. I just don't necessarily see that happening, and I'm not sure it's the purpose of this place.
Yeah, yeah. I don't necessarily think it is either, to be honest. There are just so many sources of information that indicate that it's really kind of not about that, but it's more the individual journey towards self mastery. Um, for want of another way of putting it, but it's sort of like also you can look at it as just a this kind of like simulated video game that is only there because it's a mode of exploration and expression and experimentation to see, like what happens. What happens if some immortal consciousness dreams this simulation into existence and then inserts itself into it to become a little, player in the video game, a little avatar, and then see what it can make of itself in this new environment, what it learns about itself, what it experiences, and all that sort of thing, and then ultimately, from what I can tell, and a lot of people won't like this probably, but there doesn't appear to be any kind of actual intelligent divine oversight kind of architecting, designing the whole thing or guiding it. It's more like you get injected into the video game and you kind of, in a sense, on your own and have to make the best of it. And then when you log out from the game, it's all good, it's fine. But yeah, it can be quite hellish for a lot of us in the game while we're in it. Yeah, not a lot of what I would call intelligent divine oversight.
Wow, you were just on a roll there. That was beautiful and so incredibly spot on. I resonated with that absolutely. Have you? You probably haven't because you've been busy as heck. But have you had any chance to look at any of the material from Out Through the Indoor, which is the sequel to Get Out of Here Alive?
Unfortunately, not yet.
Okay, I didn't think so, and I would not have expected you to. But this is where I got into this long, well, not terribly long, but in early in this book, I talk about Keats's understanding of the veil of soul making. John Keats, the English poet, and this is where a lot of my literary background comes into play. As I can look at some of these old pieces of literature and see within them the seeds of a lot of current thought on these topics. Sort of like you're talking about earlier, you've read all these old books and now you're trying to translate it into modern lingo. So I sort of found myself doing that. So Keats basically said that we're in this veil of soul making. He said soul as distinguished from an intelligence. There may be intelligences or sparks of the divinity in millions, but they are not souls till they acquire identities, till each one is personally itself. So, what he's describing is that we are in a kind of matrix or simulation, a dreamscape, an alchemical crucible of becoming, where our first task is to individuate. And that is the first goal. And it was really interesting because just yesterday, somebody reading this book who I'm sure has had healthy or unhealthy heaping doses of this soul trap business and victim me and victim woe is me type of sort of victim consciousness. They really came after me for proposing the classroom model, which is what Keats is also proposing, that this is an evil matrix. And I basically said, well, okay, the word evil itself is so problematic. The concept of evil is very duality riddled, and we can't use that. That is the dragons. That's not a concept that serves us in any way, because it's basically designed to disempower us and create a divide and conquer scenario. So here we are trying to individuate, and that's the first thing we're doing. And that's really kind of the hero's journey, where we go out into our little selfish life and grow up. And as we grow up, we bring back the fruits of our wisdom to share it with family, friends, and the community. That's sort of the hero's journey. What I'm writing about in in both of these books is, in a way, the second hero's journey, which I call the ultimate hero's journey, which is when you've individuated, the next thing is to actually matriculate from the matrix. to use the matrix to be birthed out into infinity as an immortal consciousness, and that is the process of becoming an immortal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't do the second thing unless you've done the first thing.
Right.
So in Get Out of Here Alive, I start out, the first half of the book is really about growing up and how to navigate this crazy digital culture with your sanity intact, and how to move forward on your hero's journey of individuation. And then we can talk turkey and talk about the ultimate hero's journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jacqueline, that's on my to-do list for tomorrow. That's good. I was just looking at one of the comments. So
Yeah. That
does that any of that resonate with where you're going in your new books?
yeah, absolutely, hugely. Because it's, I think that's basically more or less what is happening. And again, me doing things the way I do, pulling on many different sources of information, but it's kind of like we're in an exploratory exercise here. This is an experiment, if you like, but it's like blindly done. It's not an experiment that's being architected by a divine intelligence or a diabolical intelligence. It's just we, as if you want to call it, for want of a better term, source consciousness, injecting ourselves into this dreamscape to then see. It's like, well, let's see what happens, and it doesn't always work out so well. And but like you said, the individuation is then followed by this matriculation, this maturation into a much bigger paradigm or outlook, that is much more sort of transpersonal. You could say multidimensional, infinite, whatever. Moving in the direction of conscious infinitehood, if you like.
I like that. I like that.
So there's if you look at the work of for example, Robert Monroe and Bruce Moen, who knew each other and were sort of colleagues, I guess, in a manner of speaking. What they describe is this sort of monadic consciousness, this monad, which is essentially a group consciousness of many thousands of individual souls, but very intimately united in what you could call a non-local paradigm. This is as close to source consciousness as you can get, while still having like a concept of,
Mm, mm.
other souls, united in bliss. And then what they've outlined is kind of like okay, so this monad sends out all these sparks or rays of itself into the simulation to exist as independent individual personalities for a little while, and then they get, the idea is at least, that we then as individuals, when we leave the sim, when we log out from our user session, we go back to the monad, which is the source, so to speak. So that then, as a process that gets repeated, hundreds and then even thousands of times, where this happens, and this one monad is accumulating all of this experience and knowledge, it then has the option, when it is at some point satisfied with its gathered experience, has the option of what they called, what Monroe referred to as winking out, which is leaving this reality system altogether and having the option of going into a completely like a void state, undifferentiated, and then creating its own, architecting its own simulation for its own purposes.
So someone matriculating would become that being.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I describe that as dreaming gods injecting themselves into the dreamscape, individuating, matriculating, and becoming dreaming gods.
yeah, yeah, and
And
that's
so
they
they're
refer. Yeah,
so their children, their prized children, they're the ones of whom they are most proud, are the ones who actually end up becoming independent from them.
right. Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. And the term they used was graduates. They were called graduates, or it's graduation. So it ties in with your terminology.
That's awesome. Yeah, Jacqueline Rendell just said fractals. Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely in a fractalized situation,
Mm.
and I love that. I love, I've seen bits and pieces of the model that you're talking about, but the way you articulated it and put all of those pieces together was awesome. And again, I'm really chomping at the bit to check out this book. So maybe I'll get a sneak peek.
Well, I'd love
hint,
to send you an
hint,
ARC.
hint. I'm on it, man. I'm on it. I'll be happy to read that and give you a pre-pub quote if that would be useful.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to have you read it as an advance copy for sure, reviewer. Um, yeah, so I mean, all this stuff is absolutely kind of very very central to that work, and I dig. I also in that final chapter, I take apart the soul trap. I give it a really in depth analysis. The soul trap meme, and the archons. That side of it, archons, trap handlers, all this stuff, and I pull it apart in a way that I think people will find very compelling.
Oh, I love it. I love it. God, so many thoughts about that. It's someone had just someone had mentioned that this place definitely feels like a prison, and you know, it said that in the comments, and I mean I get it, and I've been there. I just think that's a stepping stone on one's individuation process. There comes a point at which you realize that the archon is actually here as your teacher. It's your sensei in the dojo of hard knocks of this life, and it's going to beat the crap out of you until you figure out that it's just you. Really,
Yeah,
that's the ultimate lesson of the shadow, is just knowing that it's there's only one of us here.
yeah, yeah. It's exactly like in the Matrix film where Neo and Agent Smith are fighting in the subway, and Smith throws Neo against the wall, and where he hits the wall or somewhere nearby is the word shadow, and that's not an accident.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Yeah, that's crazy. Absolutely. Well, maybe I was just gonna touch on one thing briefly. If I do a review, maybe we can talk with New Dawn and see if they want to publish my review of your book as a review. So if you have any correspondence with those guys, feel free to propose that, and I'll do the same.
Yeah, I just was emailing David 2 days ago, so I'll mention that to him.
Yeah, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be happy to do that. So you can give me a timeline and all that. Um,
Awesome.
I know we just got to 7 o'clock, and I want to open up the floor to questions here in a moment, but I also want to follow up on this service to self and service to others concept. And let me just briefly lay it out like this. It's all good, whether you're evolving in an unselfish or a quote unquote unselfish or a quote unquote selfish way. Doesn't matter. You're still moving forward. You're really attempting to do this individuation and matriculation business that we've been talking about. And you're doing it with respect to your own energy structure, so that people who are in groups, energy families 1 through 6, have a structure where they want to actually lose the fragmentary body and create more of a unified field, so that they can access that monadic consciousness more easily as they individuate and matriculate. And so that is the fitting way for them to evolve their their consciousness, their energy structure. That's my take. Conversely, people who are on the path of service to self, they want to maintain separation because they use that as a fulcrum for their own evolution. And it's also a very powerful mode of moving forward. And here in this matrix, the kind of yin and yang of the service to others and service to self crowds actually interact very productively. Um, in many ways, by stimulating each other, almost like teams playing against each other, to evolve and to up their game and to get clearer about what's going on. Now, of course, the dragon uses this divide and conquer scenario beautifully to actually take the Mickey with, with both. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but to really in some ways disempower both groups at a collective level. So they end up chasing a lot of rabbit holes that don't mean anything, and that's the whole mimetic design of the construct, in terms of the construct being a kind of sheeple corral, because basically the sheeple aren't just the path of service to others; it's also the cabal. They're also a bunch of sheeple. Only at the very high levels do you get people who know really anything about what's going on. That's my take. So I hope that's helpful to people in understanding my position and the kind of regenetics model of these two evolutionary paths.
I would add to that if I could quickly.
I would love that.
Um, you mentioned the cabal and the people at the highest levels. I mean, they're like I think you just said that they're basically puppets themselves. Like they have a certain level of access or perspective because they're more at an architect kind of level as far as the worldwide kind of manipulation goes. But above them, there's really kind of nothing other than the collective field entity itself. And it's funny because my mate Nick has worked with Nick, who did the book review for me. He's worked with government agencies in the UK. He's interfaced with high levels of corporations and things, and he was never able to find any kind of like intelligent, overarching guiding force. And then he mentions in one of his books there was an FBI investigator who had, there'd been this huge FBI investigation into these conspiracies, and they'd found that there seemed to be this like demonic kind of like driving force behind things, but it wasn't conscious. It was an unconscious kind of collective thing, and people are just being puppeteered by it.
Well, that is interesting. So that's almost a validation for some of the concepts that we've been discussing. I like to say that at the end of the day, even the 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 major minions are just dragon food.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whether they know it or not, right? So this has been wow. I mean, I would have expected nothing less from us in terms of the subject matter we would take on in a discussion like this. But let's go ahead and open it up to a few minutes of questions if we have any from those hanging around. So if you have a question, please write it in all caps. And if you don't hear if you've written it and I'm not responding to it, maybe I missed it in the feed and write it again, please. So if you have any kind of question for me or Brendan or both of us about, certainly this material that we've been talking about, this general subject matter. And in the meantime, so the you said Nick had written the review for you.
He actually reviewed the manuscripts.
Oh, that's the guy who reviewed the manuscripts. Awesome,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's very, very exciting. Yeah. It I'd like to think that it's possible with your work and my work and some other people out there to really begin rescripting this whole narrative around the soul trap, the reincarnation trap, and uh, to empower people more because it's amazing how something that seems like it should be for the benefit of everyone, like this reincarnation idea, can be just taken and rearranged and turned into something very limiting.
Yeah, yeah. Very self-defeating. Very
And
self-defeating.
and it's really wild. Like anything else that I've experienced, it's I stole this from you in a I think in an email or I don't remember exactly, but I'd gotten one of your emails and I thought it was hilarious. You were basically starting out the email saying, thank you, dear reader, so much for just opening this email because, I write about some heavy shit. I'm paraphrasing. And the fact that you're willing to look at what I'm saying is very important to me. Do you remember saying something sort of along those lines?
Yeah, I vaguely remember something like that. Yeah.
It was really funny because I feel like that all the time. Like people will go into all of this kind of popcorn cultural stuff or sort of facile theories around the soul trap or whatever, and they'll just eat it up and eat it up and eat it up, but they won't look deeper in a way that would empower them if they only knew. They will just skate along the surface like a water strider on the water, just never getting into the depths of what's actually going on.
Yeah, it's I mean it's pretty confronting too. I mean, like there have been times where I've been reassured by what I've the perspective that I've developed, and then at other times kind of quite disturbed by it. And it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, but at the same time, why would you adopt such a self-defeating mindset as the black-pilled sort of soul trap crowd who are literally creating a new religion based off of old religious programs? They're just giving it a new kind of skin, a new brand, rebranding it a little bit, merging some concepts, just throwing all these different ideas into this conceptual bucket with no regard for coherence or logic whatsoever. And and then they end up with this kind of mishmash of incoherent ideas that are in the end not just incoherent but just completely disempowering. Like you gain nothing from investing in that kind of perspective other than being able to say, well, poor me, I'm a victim and nothing's my fault, I've got no power here, and that's just, to me, I I can't understand why you would. I mean, I understand that giving your responsibility away, abrogating responsibility, is a relief to a lot of people, and we've seen the the sheep-like behavior of so many people, particularly the last 5 years. So I get
Yes.
most people don't want to be accountable. So I guess that then that's an alluring kind of a conceptual trap for them. Oh, you're in soul trap. It's not your fault. Your life's not your fault. Nothing's your responsibility. You can just sit there and feel bad for yourself and complain until you die. And then, well, then what? You're going to be like a model.
Recycled.
Yeah, you're going to be recycled. And I mean, if you want to see a like an absolute takedown of that whole new religion, it's the last chapter of that second book.
Well, I'm really looking forward to that because that is a real pet peeve of mine is that whole mindset. I'm kind of like, it's sort of like when in the whole, mimetic struggle between germs and terrain, right? Like, if you're going to choose one, if you're sort of creating this reality for yourself and making yourself susceptible to one model or the other by using your attention that way, why wouldn't you do it in an empowering way where this stuff can't hurt you? Why wouldn't you do that? It's like Aragorn at the end of the Lord of the Rings when they think that Frodo maybe has been taken and by the Dark Lord, and he says, "I don't believe it. I won't believe it."
Yeah, yeah,
Because he knows how powerful belief is. And so he risks his life to save Frodo that he is choosing to believe is alive. Lo and behold, he's alive, and they save the day.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And was Frodo dead or alive before? Was he captured or not captured before he before Aragorn made that choice?
Exactly, exactly. Did they change the timeline?
Yeah, yeah.
So Trey asks, where do you think our thoughts and consciousness lie? In our energy field? Um, I'm going to give you that question because you really have written a lot about that.
Well, okay. I welcome your thoughts on it too. Where do our thoughts lie?
Yeah, he and then the other question was thoughts and consciousness, and then in our energy field? Question mark.
Oh, okay. I mean, that was the concept that I was developing in book one. If we can say that they exist anywhere, in a localized format, it's the biofield. I called it the mind field. So you have these different layers or nestings of mind within mind, which we've all seen, laid out in the old like theosophical textbooks and stuff like this. The etheric body and the astral body, and then the mental body and the causal body, and the all that, all the way up to the monadic. And it's funny, in multiple, I've seen several sources, including I think Bruce Moen and Robert Monroe, say that it's actually the monad that does the thinking for you. That's where your thinking happens. And there's no real, as far as I can see, there's no evidence that thoughts are stored inside the brain, other than you can trigger, like Wilder Penfield did with the electrodes on the brain. You can trigger a memory or sensations by hitting a certain spot on the brain. But if you hit the same spot again later, you don't get the same memories. You get a different memory. So it's like you're tapping into the field. We've got this general concept of the field, and you could say non-locally, like we store this information non-locally as well, but also reflected in the more local paradigm of the biofield. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge the non-local, because we can telepathically influence each other. We can, read each other's minds. We can do all these things that are only explicable if we have a non-local paradigm as well.
Oh, well stated. Well stated. Yeah, I feel I really resonate with you. For me, looking at Monroe's concept with the monad, it would seem to me that a lot of our conscious thoughts are actually kind of in the dragon's cloud, you know, and that is that is a part of the morphic field, to use Sheldrake's language, but it's only part of it. There's a larger field that's maybe the original design for this world. This matrix was had a slightly different structure to it, and maybe a way of storing thoughts non-locally so that we could access them like people do when they stumble upon the same invention at the same time, and they never met each other and they're living on different continents. It's just all the crazy data that suggests that we all sort of share the same mind in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
I think that you'd have to put in the archon or the dragon into Monroe's equation for it to be strictly accurate in my way of seeing things.
Well, I would just make the distinction that yeah, I mean, you could do that, and that's one way of framing it. And I would put the monadic thing actually completely outside the operating system of the dragon, because the dragon, as I've formulated it, is the collective entity, the collective human field. Whereas the monad is kind of like outside of that operating system or connected to it, but not actually derived from it. It's more the source for the dragon, if that makes sense.
Yes, it is. It does make sense. The way I see that is what we're talking about when we talk about the monad is the reservoir of the unconscious,
Yeah.
which is basically the dark sea of awareness in shamanic parlance. So it is it is space. It is all that is outside of our little island of the real, the desert of the real here. And so it's also consciousness, consciousness at an infinite and eternal level.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like, yeah. And I don't really dwell on this a lot in the second book, but I look at it as, we have the human entity, the physical, like, human race. The reflection of that in the imaginal is the dragon, the collective unconscious, which is hosted in the planetary field. It's a cloud based server, if you like, the collective entity, and then that's hosted within the broader infinite, unstructured, if you like, field.
Yeah, okay, I like that. I like that. That's really helpful. This is really good for me because a lot of what I'm doing right now is I'm learning how to do all of this inner alchemy and to go to some of these places and see these things and to actually go into a kind of lucid waking dream without going to sleep. And so it's very I'm actually seeing and experiencing many of the things that we're talking about, and it's very, very bizarre, and it's like entering into that pure monadic energy of the consciousness field, and it's very powerful, and it can overwhelm you very quickly. It's why we go to sleep, is when it hits us. And if you're trying to go there, very often you get hit by the gravity of that force of consciousness and you will just conk out. you
Yeah,
know so one of the things you're learning to do in the inner alchemy work is just to stay awake, not go to sleep. There's no real need to lucid dream. You learn how to dream awake.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. You put yourself into the same brain states without losing consciousness.
Yes. And then you have so much more control over it, and it's a lot safer.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, that sounds
Uh,
interesting. If you ever have any truly, I don't want to specify potential aspects, but if you ever have any really, really trippy or like confronting experiences, feel free to let me know.
you mean with entities or creatures in the greater dreamscape?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah, I had one a little bit recently, and I don't know if it was confronting exactly, but it was a series of events where my mother, who passed years ago, was in the dream, and then somehow she transformed into a being that looked kind of like some kind of sea urchin or something like that. And I realized that this was not a friendly being. It's very, very strange. And I got out of there. That my my mode was that discretion was the better part of valor in that instance. I wasn't sure what I was dealing with, and I'm learning all of this. So I hit the road.
Yeah, yeah. Fair call.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't see any other. I saw some nice comments, but no other questions. We've gone for just over an hour and 15 minutes at this point in time. I thought that I would give you the floor to let people know exactly where they can find you and what they can do to support and interact with your work.
Cool. All right. I mean, I'm on Substack like you are. Mine's called Awakening Minds. If you search my name, you'll find it as well. So yeah, if people wanted to read the first book, that's available on my website, brendandmurphy.com/TGI, if you want to go straight to the book page. And yeah, the second one's on the way. If anyone wants to get on the, like, I've got a wait list for the second one, so that whoever's on it can be like notified as soon as it's actually ready. So feel free to just like, I don't know the link off by heart. It's not straightforward, but people can reach out to me and make a request or what have you. So yeah, I guess that's the better part of yeah, what I would mention to people.
Are you assembling an advanced reader copy team? Are do you need early reviewers if people were interested in helping you get that first wave of feedback?
I'm definitely interested in doing that type of thing. Yeah, I haven't organized it as such, but you're on the list.
All right, all right. So, and other people could, in theory, reach out to you, and you could have a dialogue with them if that were appropriate.
Yeah, if someone wants to help put the word out and they want to advance copy, yeah, that'd be great. Let me know. Reach out.
Yeah, my what I realized was that in marketing, Get Out of Here Alive, is that it was very important to give the book a long runway, and to really put it out there over and over again, and to get enough people interested in reviewing it, because you'll get, like, I had hundreds of people sign up for the review copy, and I ended up with, like, 50 of those people actually reviewing it. So
Mm,
people are very untrustworthy in that way, but it is what it is. So you'll just for you, I think the attention span has just gotten so much more fragmented. There's so much more choice. So you definitely want to make sure you get as big a pool of potential reviewers as possible, so that it can start off fast.
good tip. I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk again. When the book comes out, and we can, and I've read it and everything, we can take this conversation to a different level. I would just say that, um, in terms of supporting Brendan, supporting me, please subscribe for free to our Substacks if you haven't already. Please follow us on our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram worlds, and interact and restack stuff here on Substack that you find interesting. This chat will be made available at the end of this discussion, so you can actually go there and restack it, even in a few minutes, if you're still listening. So you can check back in, and it should show up on my Substack, saulluckman.substack.com, and you can actually restack it, and you could share your thoughts on it and that kind of thing with a note, and that would be really, really, really helpful in getting out the word of this new platform for Saul Lickman Uncensored Conversations, and also in just helping um, get out more. We'll get more exposure to these ideas that Brendan and I are bringing to the table. So I hope you all have enjoyed it. Thank you, Brendan, so much for everything, and I look forward to our next chat.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. It was good to have a chat. And yeah, I think next time we'll be able to go to a whole other level.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it, and say hello to the family and to San Miguel for me.
Cheers, brother. We'll do that. I'll go and eat some cake for you and say hi to Lee.
All right, we'll do.
All right, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.